Let's be honest. Have you ever felt like your smartphone has a built-in suicide timer? You spend over $1,000 on the latest and most powerful piece of technology human history has ever seen. But almost like clockwork, exactly 24 months later, the battery starts dying at noon and the screen begins to stutter. We like to tell ourselves that it is just the price of progress. We tell ourselves that because the tech is so advanced and the components are so tiny, they are naturally more fragile than the bulky machines our grandparents owned. We remember that old refrigerator in the basement that has been humming since the 1970s and think, they just do not make them like they used to. But what if I told you that your phone is not dying because the technology is too advanced? What if I told you it is dying because the world's most brilliant engineers were paid millions of dollars to make sure it dies? I am Sean. Today we are pulling back the curtain on the darkest secret of the industrial world. We are going on a journey through hidden corporate archives and secret boardroom meetings to expose what many experts call a century-long conspiracy against your bank account. By the end of this video, you will never look at your electronics the same way again, and you will realize that the broken device in your drawer is not a failure of engineering. Instead, it is a masterpiece of what experts call technical sabotage. To understand how we got here, we have to look at a small fire station in Livermore, California. Inside, there hangs a light bulb known as the Centennial Light. It was first turned on in 1901. Think about that for a second. When this bulb was first screwed in, the Wright brothers had not even flown their first plane. 2 world wars have passed, empires have fallen, and we have put a man on the moon. Yet that 120-year-old bulb is still glowing today. It has outlived its inventors, its owners, and even the cameras set up to monitor it. It is a physical miracle that leaves modern scientists baffled. How can a bulb from 1901 last over a century, while the high-tech LED you bought last year is already flickering? We did not lose the technology. We did not get dumber over the last 100 years. Not at all. Corporations simply got smarter at making sure things break. In the early days of the Industrial Revolution, engineers had a simple goal. They wanted to build the best and longest-lasting product possible. That was the source of their professional pride. But for the businessmen running the companies, this was a nightmare. If a consumer buys a light bulb that never burns out, they never need to buy another one. If the product is too good, the company goes bankrupt. This terrifying realization led to the birth of the first global conspiracy in history. On Christmas Eve, 1924, executives from the world's leading light bulb manufacturers, including General Electric, Osram, and Philips, met in a secret room in Geneva, Switzerland. They formed what became known as the Phoebus Cartel. Historical accounts suggest that their mission was simple, but sinister: to lower the life expectancy of the light bulb. At the time, the standard life of a bulb was about 2,500 hours. The cartel decided, through a signed agreement, that no bulb should last longer than 1,000 hours. This was not just a suggestion. They set up a rigorous testing system, and if a company dared to produce a bulb that lasted too long, they were slapped with massive fines by the cartel. Engineers were literally ordered to de-engineer their work. They researched how to make filaments more brittle and how to ensure the vacuum inside the glass would fail at exactly the right moment. This was the first recorded instance of technical genius being used to make a product worse for the consumer. It was the birth of planned obsolescence. Now, you might think this is just a dusty old story from the 1920s. You might think we have moved past such crude tactics. But the truth is, the spirit of the Phoebus Cartel never really died. It just went digital. The logic behind that secret meeting in Geneva is alive and well inside the device you are using to watch this video right now. In fact, if you have ever owned an Inkjet printer, you have been a victim of a version of this strategy that makes the Lightbulb Cartel look like amateurs. If you have an inkjet printer sitting on your desk right now, I want you to look at it very carefully. To you, it is a convenient tool for school projects or tax returns. To the companies that manufactured it, that machine is a Trojan horse designed to pick your pocket every single month for the rest of its life. Have you ever been in the middle of printing an urgent document, only to have the machine suddenly screech to a halt? A red light starts flashing. A window pops up on your computer screen with a blunt message: ink empty. Replace cartridge immediately. Naturally, you take the cartridge out. You shake it. You can clearly hear the liquid sloshing around inside. It feels heavy. It is obvious to any human being that there is plenty of ink left to finish those last few pages. But the printer does not care what you think. It refuses to move a single inch until you go to the store and drop $40 or $50 on a new piece of plastic. This is not a glitch. It is what many consumer advocates describe as a calculated digital ransom. To understand why they do this, you have to understand the insane economics of ink. Have you ever wondered why a brand new printer costs only $60 while a full set of replacement ink costs $70? It makes no sense until you realize that the printer companies are not in the business of selling hardware. They are in the business of selling liquid. If you calculate the price per gallon, printer ink is one of the most expensive substances on the face of the earth. It is more expensive than the finest vintage balsamic vinegar. It is more expensive than high-end designer perfumes from Chanel. It is even more expensive than human blood. The business model is simple: give away the razor to sell the blades. But there is a problem for the manufacturers. If you actually use every single drop of ink in that cartridge, you will not buy a new one as often. So they had to find a way to make you throw away perfectly good ink. Their solution was a tiny, unassuming piece of technology called the EEPROM chip. If you look at your ink cartridge, you will see a small gold-colored contact point. This is the brain of the cartridge. Manufacturers often claim these chips are high-tech sensors that monitor ink levels to protect your printhead from damage. However, many independent tech experts argue this is a misleading narrative. Most of these chips do not have any sensors that actually touch the liquid. They are nothing more than simple odometers. They are programmed to count how many pages you have printed. Once that counter hits a specific number, say 500 pages, the chip sends a kill signal to the printer. It does not matter if the cartridge is still 30% full. It does not matter if you are only printing tiny lines of text. The chip says you are empty, and in the eyes of the software, you are empty. But it gets even darker than that. We are not just talking about the ink. We are talking about the survival of the machine itself. A few years ago, a massive scandal broke out involving some of the biggest names in the industry, like Epson and HP. Users started reporting that their printers were suddenly dying for no reason. No paper jam, no broken parts, just a mysterious error message saying "service required" or "parts inside your printer are at the end of their service life." The official explanation was that the waste ink pads, the small sponges inside the printer that catch excess ink, were full and could leak. However, when independent repair experts and hackers decided to dig into the firmware, they uncovered a truth the companies never wanted you to find. They claimed the firmware contained what was essentially a suicide note for the machine. Inside the code, researchers found a hidden counter that tracked every single movement of the printhead. Once the printer reached a preset limit of cycles, the software would permanently lock the machine. It did not matter if the sponges were bone dry. The software had decided the machine was dead. This is what we call a digital kill switch. The goal, according to critics, was to make the repair so difficult and the service fee so high that you would simply give up and buy a brand new printer. This is the ultimate evolution of the Phoebus Cartel. In the 1920s, they had to physically weaken the light bulb. Today, they use lines of code to murder your devices from the inside out. They have turned your own possessions against you. But if you think the printer industry is bad, wait until you hear how the fashion industry took these same principles and used them to change the very fabric of the clothes on your back. This technological betrayal isn't just limited to the gadgets on your desk. To see the most blatant example of material sabotage in history, we have to travel back to the late 1930s, to the laboratories of DuPont. They had just invented a miracle material, nylon. When it was first introduced at the 1939 World's Fair, it was marketed as being stronger than steel. And they weren't lying. The original prototypes of nylon stockings were practically indestructible. There are legendary stories of these stockings being used as tow ropes for cars, or being caught in heavy machinery without a single thread snapping. Women across the United States and Europe were ecstatic. For decades, they had dealt with delicate silk stockings that tore if you even looked at them the wrong way. Now they had a product that could literally last a lifetime. On the day nylon stockings went on sale to the public, a day now known as the Nylon Riots, millions of women lined up around city blocks just to get their hands on a single pair. It was a revolution. But in the boardrooms of DuPont, the celebration was reportedly short-lived. The story that has circulated through industrial archives for decades is that the executives realized they had made a catastrophic business mistake. They had created a product that was too good. Think about the logic of a CEO in 1940. If every woman in America buys 3 pairs of stockings that never tear, never run, and never wear out, what happens to the factory next year? The market becomes saturated. Sales drop to zero. According to widely reported historical accounts, the directive was sent down from the top floor to the laboratory. Make it weaker. The chemists, the same geniuses who had spent years perfecting the strength of nylon, were now tasked with finding its breaking point. They began experimenting with the chemical structure of the fiber. They intentionally lowered the resistance to ultraviolet light, knowing that as women walked in the sun, the stockings would slowly degrade. They tweaked the knit to ensure that if a single tiny thread caught on a fingernail, it wouldn't just stay a small hole. It would run or ladder down the entire leg, rendering the garment useless. This wasn't a failure of chemistry. Instead, it was a triumph of planned fragility. They successfully convinced an entire generation that it was normal for their clothes to fall apart after a few wears. This brings us to a common myth, the idea that things used to be better because people were more honest back then. That is not quite right. Things were better because the business models had not yet been optimized for infinite growth. Today, we live in a world where disposable is the default setting for everything from your fast fashion t-shirt to your $500 coffee maker. But why do we fall for it? Why don't we revolt against companies that treat us like walking wallets? It is because they have mastered the art of the psychological trade-off. They give us a little bit of convenience or sleek design in exchange for taking away our long-term value. You might be wondering, surely, in the age of the internet and transparency, they couldn't get away with this anymore, right? Well, the truth is that they have actually gotten much bolder. They have moved from sabotaging light bulbs and stockings to sabotaging the one thing you cannot live without for more than 5 minutes: your smartphone. And the way they do it is so clever, they have managed to convince you that it was your idea all along. Let's talk about the device that is likely in your hand or your pocket right this very second. Your smartphone is the most intimate piece of technology you own. It holds your memories, your finances, and your connection to the world. But it is also a ticking time bomb. Think back to about 10 years ago. If your phone started acting sluggish or the battery wouldn't hold a charge, what did you do? You popped off the back cover, pulled out the old battery, and snapped in a brand new one for $20. It took 10 seconds and your phone felt like it was fresh out of the box again. You could keep a phone for 5 or 6 years easily because the part that wore out was easily replaceable. But then, something shifted. One by one, every major manufacturer, from Apple to Samsung, decided to seal the phone shut. They glued the batteries deep inside the chassis with industrial-strength adhesive. They told us it was for our own good. They said it allowed for thinner designs and better water resistance. They claimed it was a necessary sacrifice for progress. But let's be real here. We have had waterproof watches and rugged outdoor equipment with replaceable batteries for decades. Critics argue that the technology to make a water-resistant phone with a removable battery already existed long before. The real reason they sealed your phone is much simpler and much more profitable. Many experts believe the goal was to sync the lifespan of your phone with the lifespan of a lithium-ion battery. It is a scientific fact that lithium batteries degrade. After about 500 charge cycles, which is roughly 2 years of normal use, the battery's capacity drops significantly. This is a natural chemical process they cannot hide. By making the battery nearly impossible for a normal person to change, they turned a $30 maintenance issue into a $1,000 hardware replacement. When your battery starts to fail, you don't think about buying a new battery. You think, my phone is getting old. It is time for an upgrade. It is a brilliant trick that aligns perfectly with the 2-year carrier contracts that dominate the market. But it gets even more calculated. Do you remember the massive scandal known as Batterygate? For years, owners of older iPhones noticed that their devices became incredibly slow after a certain software update. The phones would lag, apps would crash, and the whole experience became frustrating. We all thought it was just the new software being too heavy for the old hardware. We assumed the technology had simply moved on without us. However, investigations later revealed that Apple was slowing down the processors on older phones via software updates. Apple eventually admitted to the throttling, claiming they did it to prevent the phones from shutting down unexpectedly as the batteries aged. They said they were trying to protect the devices. But the discovery of the throttling led to a global outcry. They settled for $500 million, but that was a drop in the bucket compared to the billions made from people who upgraded because their old phone felt like it was dying. This is the peak of what experts call technical sabotage. They aren't just making the hardware fragile anymore. Investigations and legal filings have shown how software can be used as a weapon to gaslight you into thinking your perfectly good machine is trash. It is like a car company remotely slowing down your engine once your tires get a little worn out. It is a direct attack on your wallet, and as we speak, they are finding even more creative ways to make sure you never, ever try to fix what you own. They are building digital fences around every single component inside your phone. We have talked about physical light bulbs and chemical coatings on stockings, but we are now entering the final and most sophisticated stage of this war. It is no longer just about making things break. It is about making things impossible to fix, even when they are still perfectly functional. This is what many experts call the digital shackle, or more technically, part pairing. Imagine you buy a car. One day, you get a flat tire. You go to a local shop, buy a brand new tire of the exact same brand and size, and bolt it onto your car. But when you try to start the engine, the car refuses to move. A message on the dashboard says, "Unauthorized component detected. Performance disabled." This sounds like a dystopian nightmare, right? But in the world of high-end electronics, this is the current reality. Manufacturers have started giving every single component inside your device, from the screen to the battery, even down to the tiny camera lens, its own unique digital serial number. When the phone is assembled at the factory, the motherboard is programmed to recognize only those specific serial numbers. It is like a digital marriage. If you try to replace a broken screen with a genuine, original part from another identical phone, the software will notice that the serial numbers do not match. Even though the part is perfect and the hardware is identical, the software will intentionally cripple the device, It might disable your Face ID, make the screen brightness settings stop working, or show a constant, annoying pop-up warning. They are using software to hold your hardware hostage. They claim this is for your security and to protect you from low-quality counterfeit parts. But critics argue that this is just a PR spin. They believe the real goal is to destroy the independent repair industry and force you back into their authorized service centers where they can charge you 3 times the fair price or convince you to just buy a new model. This isn't just happening to phones. It is happening to tractors in the American Midwest. Farmers who have spent $500,000 on a John Deere tractor find themselves unable to fix their own equipment in the middle of a harvest because a sensor failed, and the software requires an authorized technician to come out and unlock the new part with a proprietary laptop. These farmers have reportedly resorted to hacking their own tractors using Ukrainian firmware just to be able to work their own land. This is a fundamental shift in the concept of ownership. You paid for the device, you hold it in your hand, but you do not truly own it. You are just a long-term renter, and the landlord has the keys to the repair shop. You might be asking, why don't we just stop buying from these companies? The problem is that when the biggest players in the market all adopt the same tactics, the consumer feels like they have nowhere else to go. It is a modern digital version of the Phoebus Cartel. But there is a growing resistance. The right to repair movement is finally gaining traction in parliaments and senates across the US, the UK, and Europe. People are starting to realize that our disposable culture is not a natural evolution. It is a man-made crisis. But what is the true cost of all this? It isn't just the money missing from your bank account. The real price of planned obsolescence is something much more permanent and much more devastating. When we are forced to throw away a 3-year-old laptop or a 2-year-old phone because of a software lock or a glued-in battery, where does all that tech actually go? The answer is a place most of us will never see, but it is a place that should haunt every consumer on the planet. The real price is paid in a place called Agbabloshi, on the outskirts of Accra, Ghana. It is one of the largest electronic waste dumps on the planet. This is where your old smartphones, your bricked printers, and your unrepairable laptops go to die. Every year, millions of tons of high-tech trash are shipped from the United States, Europe, and Australia to these digital graveyards. Their reports describe a haunting scene where young men and children burn the plastic casings of our gadgets to get to the precious copper and gold inside. They breathe in toxic lead, mercury, and cadmium fumes just so they can survive another day. This is the final stop of the 2-year upgrade cycle. Environmentalists argue that this is the dark side of our disposable culture. We are essentially poisoning the earth because a system was designed where a product that lasts too long is seen as a bad investment. We have covered a lot today. We looked back at the secret Phoebus Cartel of 1924 that lowered the life of the light bulb. We exposed the digital lies of the inkjet printer industry and the historical accounts of chemical sabotage in the fashion world. We saw how the tech giants of today use glue and code to keep us in a constant state of buying. It is a massive, global system designed to make us feel like we never have enough, and that what we do have is already garbage. But here's the thing. We are not powerless. The companies spend millions on marketing to make you feel like you have no choice. But that is their biggest lie of all. So what can we actually do about it? First, we need to change our mindset. We have to stop seeing new as a synonym for better. Before you hit that buy button on a new phone, ask yourself if a $30 battery replacement could give your current one another 2 years of life. Support companies that actually value your right to own what you buy. Look for brands that have high repairability scores on sites like iFixit. Look for companies that sell you the spare parts and the manuals you need to fix things yourself. Second, we need to demand better laws. The right to repair movement is winning because people like you are speaking up. When we demand that manufacturers provide parts and software tools to everyone, not just their authorized shops, we break the digital shackle. We force them to compete on quality rather than on how well they can trap us. And finally, when something truly is beyond repair, make sure it is recycled responsibly. Do not let it end up in a burn pit halfway across the world. Think back to that light bulb in the California fire station. The Centennial light was not a miracle of alien technology. It was just a well-made product built by an engineer who took pride in his work. It proves that we already have the knowledge and the materials to build things that last for generations. We do not need a scientific breakthrough to have a phone that lasts a decade or a washing machine that never breaks. We just need to stop rewarding companies that build for the landfill. In a world designed to break, choosing to fix something is a revolutionary act. It is a way of saying that your money, your time, and our planet's resources have value. It is a way of taking back control from the boardrooms and the cartels. You are not just a consumer, you are a citizen, and you have the power to decide what kind of future we are building. Are we building a world of endless waste or a world of lasting quality? The choice is in your hands every time you reach for your wallet. Thank you for staying with me through this deep dive into the hidden history of our technology. If this video changed the way you look at the gadgets in your house, I have a feeling you will want to see our next one. Until then, stay smart, stay curious, and remember, if you cannot fix it, you do not really own it.